Hello and welcome to the 14th annual Kosciuszko Spring Symposium. The focus of this year's virtual conference will be Security, Faith and Resilience in the Intermarium and Beyond. Today's virtual symposium is organized by the Institute of World Politics. For those of you who are new, IWP is a graduate school of national security, intelligence, and international affairs. We offer a doctoral program, 7 master's degree programs, including 2 online MAs, and 18 certificates of graduate study. If you are interested in learning more about us, please visit us at iwp.edu. We would like to thank all of our supporters who make our IWP events program possible. To support the work of IWP, please visit iwp.edu/donate. Today we'll be hearing from Mr. Sebastian Bojemski on his lecture titled Security Challenges for Critical Infrastructure Operators in Poland. Mr. Bojemski graduated from the Institute of History of Warsaw University and gained his doctoral degree at the Cardinal Wyszyński University in Warsaw. At the Institute of World Politics, he attended individual courses in geography and strategy, geoeconomics, strategic influence, and propaganda. He was awarded scholarships by the Kosciuszko Foundation and the Grabowski Fund. Mr. Bojemski, who has extensive experience in strategic communication, marketing, sales, and management for over 15 years. He had owned a Warsaw-based consulting firm. Between 2018 and 2024, he was an executive director for marketing at PKN Orlen, the largest oil company in Central Europe, a vice chairman at Lotos Fuels, the second largest oil company in Poland, and vice chairman at PERN, the largest fuel and logistics company in the region and critical infrastructure operator. He is currently affiliated with the University College of Professional Education as a member of the Center for Research on Disinformation and Cybersecurity and a senior fellow at the Eastern Flank Institute, a Brussels-based think tank. Please welcome Mr. Bojemski.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for inviting me today. It's a great pleasure to speak to such honored audience. Today I would like to deliver a speech on the question of security challenges for critical infrastructure operators in Poland. Russia's seizure of Crimea in 2014, followed by Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine 8 years later, has changed international relations not only in Europe, but also around the world. One of the consequences of this strategic shift has been reduced security and increased insecurity. It turned out that there is no end of history. On the contrary, it's a new chapter is taking shape. Geopolitics has become the subject of ongoing public debate. The issues of threats arising from geopolitical risks have become challenges for state and companies, crucial to economic security. This presentation will discuss the challenges arising from geopolitical risks Polish critical infrastructure companies have to cope with. Geopolitical risks are risks arising from international tensions and conflicts. They have or may have a critical impact on a region, country, state, or company. This type of risk refers to both threats, realization, and escalation in relations between states or between states and international or non-state actors. According to the World Economic Forum's classification, geopolitical risks are part of the set of global risks. Those risks whose emergence or conditions for emergence have a significant and negative impact on global GDP, population, and natural resources. The world risks 2025 report defines 33 risks, including social, technological, environmental, and economic risks. The category of geopolitical risks includes armed conflicts to which states are party, proxy wars, civil wars, coups, terrorism, etc., biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons and the risk arising from their possession, geo-economic confrontation in the form of sanctions, tariffs, and restrictions on investment, and intrastate conflicts, riots, permanent breakdown of public order. Risks arising from conflicts below the threshold of war in the gray zone area seem to be missing from this list. This should include psychological operations, disinformations, cyber attacks, and aggressive intelligence activities. Among those risks in the great area are the most likely to occur in Poland. The 2023 survey of experts from the European initiative EU Protective Security Advisors shows that it is critical infrastructure that is most at risk from terrorist attacks. Of many possible targets, respondents point to energy infrastructure as the most vulnerable to attack. The most frequently identified attack tool was a drone. A similar threat to critical infrastructure facilities comes from an analysis made by the US Helsinki Commission. Between February 2022 and November 2024, 150 hybrid attacks conducted directly or indirectly by Russia against NATO countries were identified. 1/3 of them targeted infrastructure facilities, the second most important target of the operation. Analyzing the geopolitical situation in the world and drawing conclusion from the above data, it should be assumed that critical infrastructure operators face great costs related to their protection. In Polish law, the term critical infrastructure is defined as systems and their constituent functionally related facilities, including construction facilities, equipment, installation, services that are key to the security of the state and its citizens, and that serve to ensure the efficient functioning of public administration bodies, as well as institutions and entrepreneurs. Critical infrastructure includes systems supply of energy resources and fuels, communications, transportation. From this list and the provision of the rest of the law, it is clear that critical infrastructure is part of the infrastructure of energy companies, financial companies, etc., regardless of their current legal form. At the central level, the Government Security Center completes a classified list of facilities, installations, equipment, and services included in critical infrastructure. An entity with facilities on its territory, there are on the classified list is referred to as a critical infrastructure operator. This is where the emergency management law overlaps with another piece of legislation, the National Cybersecurity System Law. This law introduces the term critical service and defines it as a service that is critical to the maintenance of critical social and economic activities. The law introduces a criterion defining critical service operator. This is an entity whose provision of such a service is dependent on information and communication technology systems, and an event adverse consequences for such systems may disrupt the provision of such a service. Critical infrastructure operator and critical service operator companies include, among others, like banks, telecoms. They include the key in terms of energy security companies, the electricity transmission operator, the operator of the gas transmission system, and the crude oil and fuel logistics operator. The law imposes additional obligations on entities with critical infrastructure in their area. According to the emergency management law, owners and sole and dependent owners of critical infrastructure facilities, installations, or equipment have an obligation to protect them, in particular by preparing and implementing, in accordance with anticipated risks, plans for the protection of critical infrastructure and maintaining their own backup systems to ensure the security and sustain the functioning of this infrastructure until it is fully restored. Critical infrastructure operators are obliged to protect their own infrastructure as well as manage the risks associated with it. The political tensions that had been rising in Europe since 2014 has evolved into a full-scale armed conflict in Ukraine in 2022, and actions below the threshold of war in Europe, mainly in the Baltic Sea and Central and Eastern European countries. In the Baltic Sea, it is standard, Russian practice to jam GPS signals, which clearly makes navigation difficult. The Russian side uses civilian ships flying the Chinese flag, for example, to carry out the sabotage missions. Between 2022 and 2024, the Baltic Connector gas pipeline connecting Finland and Estonia was damaged. The telecommunications cables connecting Finland to Germany and Lithuania to Sweden were damaged. And the Eastlink power cable connecting Finland and Estonia and 4 telecommunications cable were damaged as well. The purpose of this activity is to lower the level of security in the Baltic, to burden the countries in the region with additional activities and thus costs, and to divert attention from the so-called shadow fleet that has been sailing in the Baltic since 2023. This is the name given to the transport of embargoed fuels and oil, mainly to India, Turkey, and China, on old ships sailing under flags of convenience. It is worth noting that the Baltic plays an extremely important role for Russia. For example, as of September 2023, almost 60% of Russian oil exports took the sea route through the Baltic Sea. The Baltic ports are the only Russian ports that do not freeze and which today operate without restrictions. From a Polish perspective, the sea is also extremely important, taking into account the consumption of hydrocarbons, gas, oil, and coal. Poland is 48% dependent on the Baltic Gateway. For oil imports, this figure is at 100%, with oil also flowing through the Polish transmission system to the 2 German refineries. And generally speaking, ports also play an important role in the import and export of goods. Russian Special Services activity also takes place on land, where intelligence, sabotage, as well as subversive activity are carried out. In 2014, as an ammunition storage facility was blown up in the Czech Republic. As the investigation showed, in 2021, the GRU operatives had been responsible, and after such conclusions, the Czech Republic government decided to expel a dozen Russian diplomats. The GRU carried out a similar action in Bulgaria in 2015. Last year, explosives were found near a NATO product pipeline in Germany. Arson attacks on shopping malls, bus depots, warehouse halls, and production facilities have been reported in Poland and Lithuania. In several cases, investigators found the involvement of individuals acting on behalf of the Russian special services. The most notorious incident related to the activities of the Russian services in Poland was the activity of an intelligence sabotage network formed of immigrants from the East. In Lublin, a court convicted a group of more than a dozen citizens of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia in connection with their intelligence and influence operation actions. Recruited through the Telegram social network, popular among the population of the former USSR, and paid with bitcoins, they carried out tasks ordered by an anonymous GRU handler. Communication between them was maintained via social media. The group members' tasks were painting inscriptions on walls against the conservative government, printing and posting anti-war posters, locating cameras at sea and airports, and along railroad routes that were used to transport military equipment into Ukraine. An act of sabotage targeting one of the transports was also planned. After the tasks were completed and documented, members of the group were rewarded with amounts ranging from a few to several hundred euros. The consequences of the aggressive activities of the Russian Federation Special Services was the closure of two of the three consulates in Poland and the expulsion of their staff. Getting back to the question of critical infrastructure, I would like to say that the emergency management law requires also critical infrastructure operators to prepare protection plans. At the state level, there is a national plan for critical infrastructure protection. The appendix to the national plan, titled Standards for Ensuring the Efficient Functioning of Critical Infrastructure, Good Practices and Recommendations, is intended for entities with critical infrastructure on their territory. Those interested will find information on organizational and technical aspects of protection. Issues cover physical, technical, personnel, information and communication technology, and anti-drone protection. Based on the experience of the other countries and the opinions of experts, it should be assumed that the biggest challenge in protecting critical infrastructure is to proper organization of drone resources. In February this year, an amendment to the aviation law was signed by the President. It provides legal possibilities to implement anti-drone systems and disposal of unmanned aircraft. In addition to the state services, private security companies have been given such power. They can not only take control of drones, catch them in a net, but also destroy them, for example, with firearms and other drones. In this situation, private security companies need to expand their competences in this area, not only systems to combat drones, but also piloting. Drones are not only a threat, but also an effective tool for surveillance, patrolling, and aerial combat. It is essential to build private training centers for drone pilots. Security company requirements and training plans should be consulted, coordinated with the armed forces, so that drone pilots meet military requirements. From the Army's perspective, security companies' drone teams should be military reserves in case of war. This month, Polish MOD announced that the civilian drone legion will be organized. Besides obvious benefits for the army, for private security companies, it is an opportunity to share their experience and learn lessons from both military users and civilian ones. High training requirements may be financial barrier for some critical infrastructure protection companies. For this reason, the establishment of a single security company for strategic energy infrastructure entities should be pursued. It would provide services to the operators of gas, electricity, and oil transmission. Other critical infrastructure operators could be covered by the anti-drone umbrella on a commercial basis. With a strong economic foundation, local customers, such a company could also offer its services outside Poland. An anti-drone umbrella and specialized teams of security personnel could protect shipping in the Baltic Sea, as well as, for example, critical infrastructure of the other Baltic countries. This would be an additional private element in strengthening protection and security in the area of the NATO's eastern flank. And last but not least, when it comes to drones, changes in Polish law have strengthened anti-aircraft protection for enterprises. However, the aspect of unmanned surface vessels has been overlooked. The Ukrainian field experience shows that with a small number of sea drones, it is possible to block shipping in relatively large sea areas. Unmanned surface platforms can carry flying drones, anti-aircraft and anti-ship missile systems, and conduct radio-electronic warfare. And this way they perform the same role as flying drones. The task for lawmakers in Poland is to equip private security companies with the right to also combat these types of threats, which can be part of operations below the threshold of war. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention. I think this is the question of protection of critical infrastructure is a very, very important issue, not only in Poland, but in whole Central European region. I haven't mentioned a word about cyber security, but it's because it is too obvious for everyone that strengthening cyber security is on the first place, right before the question of anti-drone protection. Thank you very much.